Hello and welcome to a cold and blustery January day here in the Diocese of Leeds. My name's Becky Nicholson. I'm the Lead Stewardship Officer here at the Diocese. And I've prepared for you today a few slides to help you fundraise for major projects. People often say to me, where do we start? Do we approach our grant funders first? Have we to speak to our congregation first? Well, the Institute of Fundraising have laid out a very simple and straightforward 5-step procedure for you so that you can guide your fundraising in a measured and strategic way, and it helps you get to those fundraising targets. I hope you find it useful. If you have any questions or you need to clarify anything, my details are at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Fundraising for larger projects is often referred to as capital campaign fundraising. It's defined by Trudy Hayden in her excellent book published by the Directory of Social Change as a coordinated institutional effort with a specified goal and timetable to increase an organisation's permanent assets, a building, a significant expansion of programme, an endowment, or a combination of these that will lift the organisation to a higher level of performance. Trudy is making 4 distinct points in this quote. Firstly, a capital campaign is, above all, a coordinated institutional effort. It's not a discrete task that can be delegated to your fundraising staff or development department. It requires commitment and participation from every part of the organisation. That includes trustees, staff and volunteers, in a well-planned, synchronised set of activities in which everyone has a critical role to play. Ideally, of course, fundraising would always be structured as a coordinated organisational effort, but it often happens that a capital campaign becomes the catalyst for creating the integration. Secondly, a capital campaign has a defined goal and timetable, a clear beginning and a clear end with specified and publicly declared financial and programme targets. These targets must be met or the campaign will be seen to fail. Thirdly, a capital campaign increases the organisation's permanent assets, that is, its total net worth. A capital campaign makes the organisation grow quickly and dramatically. Finally, the purpose of a capital campaign is to lift the organisation to a higher level of performance. It's about change, increased effectiveness, and the achievement of a bold vision of the organisation's future. Typically, a capital campaign follows a sequence of 5 stages. These are the feasibility phase, the preparatory phase, private phase, the public phase, and the completion phase. And I shall talk about each one in turn. Before you embark on a capital project, you will need to make sure that you have the involvement of the Archdeacon and the Diocesan Advisory Committee, that you have consulted with all stakeholders in your church to establish a need, the exact requirements, and crucially, their support. You might be compiling evidence and statistics, conducting interviews and holding focus groups, for example. You will also have established that the church is viable and that your PCC will be around in 10 years' time to reap the benefits of a big investment. Note that funders will require grants to be paid back if the worst happens and your church needs to close. Once you are sure of the above, hold consultation talks with surveyors and architects. This may cost money, so proceed with caution here. And finally, start to assemble a fundraising team willing to undertake the different aspects of the fundraising strategy. The fundraising preparatory phase is the largest and most important phase. Get this wrong or fail to plan is, as the old adage says, planning to fail. Spend time working through this phase and involve everyone in your church, the fundraisers, the congregation, and all other stakeholders, as well as the clergy, of course. You are not asking for money at this point, just opinions, ideas, and volunteer commitment. To begin, many capital project fundraisers draw up a gift table, like the one here, to establish whether their fundraising targets are realistic. At this point in the planning, you should identify the funders and the major givers who will support your project and the amounts they would be able to give or pledge. It may be useful to play around with the figures on the table so you can see where to direct your fundraising efforts. If, for example, you know that there will be fewer major gifts at the top of the table, you will see that work will be needed to attract more smaller gifts at the bottom. Something to bear in mind when setting your target is to factor in the professional fees for architects and surveyors along with VAT. VAT for works to the fabric of a building, for the bells, the pipe organs and the pews can be claimed back through the Listed Places of Worship grant scheme. That's if your building is listed. It can be claimed after everyone has been paid and the project is completed. The VAT will not be covered by grants, so make sure your fundraising target includes the VAT amount. If your church isn't listed, you will probably have to cover the VAT yourself. In the preparatory phase, you can describe the direction you will take to raise the funds. For example, raising £200,000 will involve financial input from lots of people, so you'll need to give some thought to who those people are. Smaller projects will involve fewer funders and groups of donors. Identify and list the big investors first, such as major gift givers and grants from trusts and foundations. A good place to start is within your own congregation. Is there anyone who would be willing to invest in the project as a philanthropic gesture, for example? Next, look at grants from funders on databases such as Funds Online or Funding Central, and details of funders for big projects like this are also listed on the Parish Resources website. It's always a good idea to ring or to write to the funder first to speak to them about your project and ask if it's something they would be interested in supporting and for specific details on how to apply. You will also wish to include community fundraising events such as galas or auctions, sponsored runs perhaps, or bucket collections, and these can be identified in this section. But bear in mind, it's a good idea to wait until you have major funding secured before you begin these public fundraising events, because you run the risk of fundraising fatigue from the public if you are asking people for money for far too long. Major grant funders will wish to see that matched or partnership funding from money you have raised yourself is available. Check this out and secure a major funder on an agreed funding basis before you go out and advertise your own community fundraising plans. Next, identify ways that you can collect smaller gifts from your congregation. Would a planned giving scheme work? Is anyone able to give a sizable gift from a corporate organisation under a tax-efficient scheme? Or would anybody like to buy a tangible piece of the project, like a brick or a seat? And will naming opportunities be available for these? Finally, you will wish to pull all this together in your tactical plans. The tactical plan is a detailed plan of the fundraising that will be undertaken. Separate tactical plans will be written for fundraising from different income streams. For example, for grants, from the congregation, from the wider community, and from digital sources, such as crowdfunding or text giving. These sub-plans will contain different specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-scaled objectives, and will identify budgets needed to effectively raise the funds. They will also clearly identify who is responsible for doing each task. In order to tie all the fundraising activities together in a cohesive, chronological plan, it may be useful to use a Gantt chart system or project management software. The case for support is a rationale for funders and the community for their support for your project, and should engender a sense of immediacy, excitement, and importance. Usually 3 to 6 pages long, a good case for support draws on the existing church vision and mission, and articulates the ambitions for the future. It persuades people to buy into that vision and ambition as it does so. It is helpful if several people are involved in writing the case for support so that it presents an accurate, articulate, and compelling case. Try to make potential supporters really see the importance of your project and the genuine impact it will have on the congregation, on the wider community, and on the generations beyond. In other words, make your supporters really sit up and take notice. The case document is then shared with the entire fundraising team. Doing this ensures everyone is working with the same message and that mistakes are avoided. When it is appropriate, key wording can be taken directly from the case statement and placed onto grant applications, onto leaflets, posters, websites, and crowdfunding pages. Having one coherent and complete case statement makes life much easier for everyone involved in the fundraising and for the public who will be hearing your message. The private phase is the part of the plan where you fundraise quietly without the fanfare of public announcements. Here, you can approach lead prospects. This means go for the highest gifts first, either from philanthropic individuals who would like to support your cause, or from grants from trusts, foundations, and government funding. You should aim to secure at least 50% of your funding this way. Then assess how much you need to raise using other public forms of fundraising and plan accordingly. If the comprehensive case statement has been written and agreed, applying for a grant should be relatively straightforward. You can use wording from your case statement in your application, but be sure to match your application wording to the funder's criteria as far as possible. In other words, don't submit identical applications to multiple funders. Most applications nowadays are submitted online, and often a funder will ask you to submit an outline proposal before submitting a complete application. Some funders provide prompts for you to describe your project, and others prefer a free-form application, but whatever the requirements, be sure to follow them precisely. Funders may discard applications that don't follow their guidelines. An application for funding should contain the following: a contents page, an executive summary, that is an outline of your project, a statement of need, that's a description of why your project is needed in your church and evidence to support this, your project objectives, that is what will your project do to address the need, your project description, how in detail will it work, and how will the project's success be evaluated, that is the outcomes. All funders like to see how you will measure your success. In addition, you will really want to instill confidence in your funders that your project is going to do what you say it's going to do. So you will need to explain any expertise that's available to you. Have you got special skills, or will you need to appoint a contractor or third party to deliver the services that you hope to offer? You want to highlight any future plans you may have. Will your project need further funding as time goes on, or will it be self-sustaining? What plans have you made here? You will also like to highlight your budget. How much will your project cost? Look very closely at your VAT situation and the fees, and add these to your project cost. What additional support do you need? Discuss other funding streams that you have asked for or that you can access, and be aware that funders will want to see evidence of your own funding or funding potential as a condition of your grant. Finally, appendices such as financial accounts and details about your governance should go at the end. Take a look at the major reasons that funding applications are unsuccessful. Primarily, funding bids fail because they do not fit the eligibility criteria. If you are going to take the time to make an application, then do check that your project is something that your funder will actually fund. Of those applications that do meet the eligibility criteria, only 40% are approved for funding, and the above slide shows some of the reasons. The Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust and the Big Lottery Fund often complain that applications are far too long. They find it difficult to understand the information that they are presented with, and they find it difficult to make a decision based on that information. Charities may be tempted to throw in a few of the latest buzzwords or phrases, such as localism or the big society, and funders say they don't like it. Charities hope it will give them an edge, but funders say it really won't. Funders are regularly faced with a wall of words. They work to deadlines and are often looking at 40 to 50 applications a week. Assessors are reading loads of applications and they get confronted with something that has no paragraphs, really long sentences, and very dense text. So it's a good idea to ask someone who's not connected with your organisation to read your grant applications before they are sent to ensure they make sense. The public phase is started when all major gifts have been secured, and this is when the buzz and the excitement starts. There are two main reasons that capital project fundraisers wait before going public with their plans. The first is to ensure that they don't get donor fatigue, that never-ending request for money from the same people in the same community can be exhausting for all involved. A big but short public campaign is far better. Aim for a maximum of 6 months and keep everyone informed of your target and how far you have already come. The second reason is that by securing major gifts for say 50% of the total, you've already reached the halfway mark, and psychologically that is really important for the smaller donor who can see the end in sight. A massive target of £100,000 for many is daunting, and some may feel that their £50 donation will make no significant difference. However, if you say you're already halfway or 3/4 of the way to your total, it will be a better donation proposition for many people. The public phase is when you advertise your project far and wide, and you put your community and your digital fundraising tactics in place. Remember to give people a range of donation opportunities, including online, digitally, through one-off tax-efficient gifts, and by attending events. The variation of opportunity here is only limited by your imagination. Keep a careful eye on your momentum, though, until your goal is reached. The completion phase takes place after your fundraising total has been reached. It is not a time to sit back, however. There is work to be done to ensure all your donations are collected, pledges are fulfilled, and gift aid is claimed. Building work can finally begin, and payment is often made in stages to contractors. Keep a careful eye on this and monitor work closely to see that all obligations are fulfilled. As work on the project progresses, keep everyone informed with how well it's going. Remember to keep your grant funders informed of progress so that they can release their funds at the right time. Grant funders will also seek information that proves their money has been spent correctly. This may be a final report from the surveyor for building improvement works, or it may be a more detailed report showing the impact of the build on the lives of people. Be sure to follow their evaluation procedures correctly, though, and never forget to say thank you for their investment in your church. Finally, the most rewarding part of any project is to be able to celebrate the campaign's success publicly. When the work is finished and the bills paid, it is time to say thank you to all involved. Send thank you letters to everyone who has supported you, all the donors, including grant funders, people who have committed their time and talents, paid and unpaid, and invite them all to a special event to celebrate. Give thanks to God for His greatness and enjoy what you have created together. Celebration is the completion of worship, for it dwells on the greatness of God, as shown in His goodness to us. So hold a celebration, hold an event to give thanks to everybody. Thank you all for listening. I hope you found it useful. Should you need any more information or any advice, I'm very happy to come and speak to you, and my details are here. Bye-bye.